What happens when Bill Maher, the sharp-tongued provocateur who redefined talk shows with politically incorrect, faces 50 haters determined to tear him down? This was the moment truth clashed with a mob in front of millions. Maher, a legend whose monologues on Real Time make America laugh, cringe, and argue, has always divided the nation. His critics, a volatile mix of religious leaders, political activists, and everyday viewers, united in outrage, demanding his silence. What began as a talk show became a battle of one man against a crowd, shaking the airwaves and stirring the soul of a nation. Watch to the end and share your thoughts in the comments. Did the haters go too far? Grayson raised a hand, silencing the room. "Let's meet our first critic," he said, his tone neutral but laced with a showman's flair. "What's your issue with Bill Maher?" A tall, stern-faced man in his 60s stood, his voice booming with conviction. He was a pastor from the Midwest, his suit crisp, his eyes burning with righteous fury. "Mr. Maher, your so-called jokes about religion insult millions. You mock faith to seem clever, but you're just a cynic laughing at what people hold sacred." The crowd gasped, some clapping in agreement, others murmuring in defense of Maher. Grayson tilted his head, his voice cutting through the noise. "What does Bill say?" Maher leaned back in his chair, his smile sharp as a blade. "I don't mock faith," he said, his tone measured but biting. "I mock hypocrisy. If your religion tells you to love thy neighbor but you're out here hating, maybe take a look in the mirror." The pastor's face reddened, but before he could respond, Grayson cut in. "Next, hater." A woman in her 40s stood, her voice trembling with anger. She was a political activist, her sign reading, "Maher divides us." "You attack conservatives for ratings," she snapped. "Your sarcasm isn't truth, it's just noise to keep you relevant." The audience split again, some shouting support, others jeering. Maher's eyes narrowed, but his smile didn't waver. "Lady, I attack bad ideas, not parties," he said. "If conservatives or liberals can't handle a mirror, that's their problem, not mine." The crowd roared, some chanting his name, others booing louder. Grayson's voice sliced through again. "Next, hater." The attacks came faster now, each one sharper than the last. A young blogger accused Maher of punching down with his humor, targeting marginalized groups for cheap laughs. A retired teacher called him a sellout who'd abandoned the principles of politically incorrect for fame. A libertarian in the back row shouted that Maher's anti-religion rants alienated half of America. Each time, Grayson's refrain, "What does Bill say?" or "Next, hater," kept the rhythm relentless, like a drumbeat driving the tension higher. Maher fielded each blow with precision, his responses a mix of wit and defiance. To the blogger, he said, "Punching down? I punch at power, politicians, preachers, anyone who thinks they're untouchable." To the teacher, he shot back, "Politically incorrect got canceled because I told the truth. You want safe? Watch game shows." To the libertarian, he leaned forward, his voice low but firm. "If my words scare you, maybe your beliefs aren't as solid as you think." The crowd was a powder keg, split between those who remembered Maher's 90s glory days and those who saw him as a provocateur gone too far. The studio vibrated with energy. Fans of politically incorrect whispered to each other, their eyes gleaming with nostalgia. They remembered Maher's late-night rants, his ability to cut through the noise of the 90s with a smirk and a truth bomb. But the haters were unrelenting, their accusations growing bolder. A woman in her 60s, clutching a Bible, stood and pointed at Maher. "You've made a career tearing down faith," she cried. "You call it truth, but it's just cruelty." The crowd hushed, sensing the weight of her words. Grayson's voice broke the silence. "What does Bill say?" Maher's smile faded, just for a moment. His eyes, usually sharp with sarcasm, softened with something like weariness. "I don't tear down faith," he said quietly. "I tear down the walls people build to hide from reality. If that stings, maybe it's because truth isn't always kind." The woman sat, her lips tight, but the crowd stirred, some clapping, others muttering in dissent. The air grew heavier, the divide in the room palpable. Backstage, the producers exchanged glances. "He's walking a tightrope," one whispered. Maher's publicist paced, muttering about damage control. The format was brutal. 50 haters, one after another with no breaks. Yet Maher sat steady, his posture relaxed but his eyes alive, scanning the crowd like a general surveying a battlefield. The audience felt it too. Those who grew up watching politically incorrect leaned forward, sensing the old Maher, the one who'd taken on politicians, celebrities, and sacred cows with equal gusto, coming alive. The next hater was a young man, a political commentator with a podcast and a chip on his shoulder. "You're a hypocrite, Bill," he said, his voice dripping with disdain. "You claim to stand for truth, but you just pander to your audience for clout. You're no different from the politicians you mock." The accusation landed like a punch, and the crowd gasped. Grayson, ever the neutral showman, leaned forward. "What does Bill say?" Maher's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed calm. "Kid, I've been doing this since you were in diapers," he said. "I don't pander, I provoke. If you want applause, go to a rally. I'm here for the truth, not the cheers." The crowd erupted, some cheering wildly, others booing. The young man smirked, unconvinced, but sat down. Grayson's voice cut through again. "Next hater." The attacks grew personal. A former fan, a man in his 50s, stood and shook his head. "I used to love politically incorrect," he said. "But you've changed, Bill. You're not funny anymore. You're just mean." The words stung, and for a split second, Maher's face betrayed a flicker of doubt. The crowd noticed, their murmurs growing louder. Grayson, sensing the shift, pressed forward. "What does Bill say?" Maher leaned into the mic, his voice steady but laced with emotion. "Mean? Maybe. But I'd rather be mean than silent. Politically incorrect got canceled because I wouldn't shut up after 9/11. You want nice? I'm not your guy." The crowd roared, some standing in support, others shouting in anger. The studio felt like it might combust, the tension thick enough to choke on. The show paused for a commercial break, but the cameras kept rolling for the live stream. Maher stayed at the table, sipping water, his eyes scanning the crowd. The haters whispered among themselves, strategizing their next moves. Grayson chatted with a producer, his face unreadable. The audience, caught between nostalgia and outrage, buzzed with anticipation. Those who remembered Maher's battles in the 90s, the way he'd taken on the establishment with a grin and a quip, felt a surge of pride. But others saw only a man hiding behind sarcasm, dodging accountability. Backstage, Maher's publicist approached him, her voice low. "Bill, tone it down," she urged. "You're alienating half the room." Maher chuckled, but his eyes were tired. "If I'm not alienating someone, I'm not doing my job," he said. The publicist sighed, knowing he wouldn't budge. The truth was, Maher was exhausted, not by the haters, but by the endless cycle of outrage. He'd been fighting this fight for decades, from politically incorrect cancellation to real-time's constant controversies. Yet here he was, still standing, still swinging. The break ended, and Grayson returned to the stage. "We're back on Truth or Dare," he said, his voice crisp. "Bill Maher has faced 25 haters so far. Can he handle 25 more?" The crowd cheered and booed, their energy unrelenting. Maher leaned forward, his smile returning, but his eyes carried a weight the audience couldn't quite name. The haters, sensing blood, prepared their sharpest attacks yet. The next hater was a woman in her 30s, a journalist with a reputation for calling out celebrities. "Bill, your sarcasm isn't clever. It's lazy," she said, her voice cutting. "You hide behind jokes because you're afraid to stand for anything real." The crowd gasped, the accusation hitting a nerve. Grayson's eyes gleamed with showbiz instinct. "What does Bill say?" Maher's smile tightened, but his voice was steady. "Lazy? I've spent 30 years saying what others won't. If you think that's easy, try it sometime." The journalist rolled her eyes, but the crowd was divided, some clapping, others shouting her on. The attacks kept coming. A professor who called Maher intellectually dishonest, a comedian who accused him of stealing the spotlight from younger voices, a conservative activist who branded him a coastal elite out of touch with America. Each time, Maher countered with a mix of wit and conviction. Dishonest? I'm the guy who calls out both sides while you pick teams, he told the professor. To the comedian, he said, if you want the stage, earn it. Don't whine about it. To the activist, he smirked. I'm from Jersey, not Malibu. If that's elite, you need a new dictionary. The crowd was a storm of cheers and jeers, the studio electric with conflict. As the 40th hater sat down, the room felt like it was teetering on the edge. Maher's face showed the strain, his jaw tight, his eyes flickering with a mix of defiance and fatigue. The haters had landed blows, accusing him of everything from cynicism to betrayal. Yet he hadn't backed down, his responses sharp and unapologetic. The audience was split, but those who remembered Politically Incorrect, the show that had dared to challenge the status quo in the 90s, felt a spark of the old Maher, the one who'd changed the game. Grayson stepped forward, his voice cutting through the chaos. 10 haters left, he said. Can Bill Maher hold his ground? The crowd roared, some chanting, Bill! Bill! While others booed. Maher leaned back, his smile faint but unbroken. He knew the worst was yet to come, but he was ready. The stage was set for a showdown that would echo beyond the studio, a clash of truth against outrage that America wouldn't soon forget. The Truth or Dare studio pulsed with raw energy, the air thick with the weight of 40 haters already unleashed. Bill Maher sat at the circular table, his posture still relaxed but his eyes sharp, glinting like they did during his fiercest real-time monologues. The neon lights cast shadows across his face, amplifying the drama of the moment. The audience, a mix of loyal fans and outraged critics, was a powder keg ready to ignite. Signs reading, Bill Maher rules, clashed with others, snarling, Stop Maher, in a visual echo of America's divided heart. Host Tom Grayson stepped forward, his voice crisp and neutral, slicing through the noise. 10 haters left, he declared. Can Bill Maher hold his ground? The 41st hater stood, a retired military veteran in his 60s, his voice steady but laced with betrayal. Bill, I watched Politically Incorrect in the 90s, he said. You used to challenge power. Now you just mock regular people, veterans, believers, workers, for laughs. The crowd hushed, the accusation cutting deeper than the others. It wasn't just criticism, it was personal, a stab at Maher's legacy. Grayson tilted his head, his showman's instinct sensing the shift. What does Bill say? Maher's smile flickered, a rare crack in his armor. He leaned forward, his voice quieter than before but heavy with conviction. I don't mock regular people, he said. I mock the powerful who lie to them. Politicians, corporations, dogmas that keep folks like you in chains. If my words hit you, maybe it's because those lies hit harder. The veteran's eyes narrowed, unconvinced, but he sat down. The crowd murmured, some nodding in support, others whispering dissent. Grayson's voice cut in. Next hater. A woman in her 50s, a community organizer from the South, rose next. Her voice trembled with righteous anger. Your jokes about religion aren't just offensive. They're dangerous, she said. You fuel division, Bill, tearing at the fabric of our communities. The audience split, some clapping fiercely, others booing. Maher's eyes locked on hers, his expression unreadable. What does Bill say? Grayson asked, his tone almost taunting. Maher leaned back, his voice calm but edged with steel. Division? That's not me. That's the world we live in. I don't tear communities apart. I shine a light on the cracks already there. If you want unity, start with the truth. The woman shook her head, her lips tight, but the crowd erupted, half in cheers, half in jeers. The studio felt like a pressure cooker, the tension mounting with each exchange. The haters kept coming, their attacks growing bolder. A young professor accused Maher of intellectual cowardice, hiding behind sarcasm to avoid real debate. A former comedian called him a has-been who'd lost his edge. A conservative radio host branded him a Hollywood elitist who sneered at middle America. Each accusation landed like a blow, and Maher's responses, though sharp, carried a growing weariness. Cowardice? I've debated everyone from priests to presidents, he told the professor. Has been? I'm still here, kid, he shot at the comedian. To the radio host, he smirked. Hollywood. I'm a Jersey guy who tells it straight. You're the one with the script. The audience was a storm of emotions. Fans of Politically Incorrect leaned forward, their eyes gleaming with nostalgia for the Maher who'd taken on the establishment in the 90s with a grin and a truth bomb. But the haters' relentless barrage was taking its toll. Maher's jaw tightened, his hands gripping the table's edge. Backstage, his publicist paced, muttering about damage control. He's got to pull back, she whispered to a producer. But Maher showed no sign of retreat. His eyes scanned the crowd, defiant, ready for the next blow. The 49th hater stood, a man in his 40s, a political strategist with a slick suit and a sharper tongue. His voice dripped with contempt. Bill, you're a fraud, he said. You hide behind sarcasm because you have no principles. Your truth is just noise for headlines. You're not a provocateur. You're a clown. The words hung in the air, venomous and final. The crowd gasped, the accusation crystallizing every hater's grievance. Grayson leaned forward, his voice low but piercing. What does Bill say? For a moment, Maher was still, his eyes fixed on the strategist. The studio fell silent, the weight of the moment suffocating. Fans held their breath, sensing the old Maher, the one who'd faced down networks and mobs, stirring beneath the surface. Haters smirked, thinking they'd finally broken him. Then Maher stood, slow and deliberate, his chair scraping against the floor. His face was calm, but his eyes burned with a fire that recalled his real-time rants. He leaned into the mic, his voice low, steady, and devastating. You call me a clown? He began. I've spent 30 years saying what you're too scared to hear. My sarcasm? It's not a shield, it's a scalpel, cutting through the lies you swallow every day. You want principles? I've lost jobs, friends, and sleep standing for truth. Politically Incorrect got canceled because I wouldn't bow after 9/11. Real time keeps going because I don't back down. You want hugs instead of honesty? This isn't your show. He paused, his gaze sweeping the crowd. America's asleep, and you're mad at me for the wake-up call? If you can't handle the truth, that's your problem, not mine. With a final, deliberate move, he dropped the mic onto the table, the thud echoing like a gunshot. Then he sat back down, his expression unreadable but his presence commanding. The studio exploded. Fans leapt to their feet, clapping and chanting, Bill! Bill! Haters sat stunned, their momentum shattered. Even those who'd booed earlier hesitated, caught off guard by the raw force of his words. Grayson, ever the neutral host, tried to regain control. Next, hater, he called, but his voice was drowned out by the crowd's roar. The final hater, a young activist, stood but faltered, her prepared speech crumbling under the weight of the moment. I think you're divisive, she stammered. Maher just looked at her, his silence louder than any retort. She sat down, defeated. The show was over, but the studio buzzed with aftershocks. Maher rose from the table, his movements deliberate, his face a mix of exhaustion and quiet triumph. He walked off stage, ignoring Grayson's attempt to wrap things up. Well, that was unforgettable, wasn't it? The host said, his smile strained. The crowd kept cheering, their applause following Maher into the wings. Backstage, his publicist rushed to him, her face a mix of relief and panic. You did it, Bill, but we've got a PR nightmare, she said. Maher just chuckled, his voice hoarse. Nightmare? That's just Tuesday. The fallout was immediate. Headlines screamed across the internet. Bill Maher destroys 50 haters in epic showdown. Social media erupted, with fans of real-time and politically incorrect flooding comments with praise. This is the Bill we loved in the 90s, one wrote. He's still got it, another declared. Clips of Maher's mic drop moment went viral, racking up millions of views. Even some haters admitted respect, one tweeting, I don't agree with him, but the man's got guts. The ratings for Truth or Dare skyrocketed, the episode becoming a cultural lightning rod. In the days that followed, pundits dissected the showdown. Some called Maher a hero for standing his ground. Others branded him divisive, doubling down on their criticism. But for the audience who'd grown up with politically incorrect, those who remembered the 90s as a golden era of talk shows when truth-tellers like Maher and Carson ruled the airwaves, the moment was cathartic. It wasn't just a win for Maher. It was a reminder of why his voice mattered. His sarcasm, his refusal to bow, his relentless pursuit of truth had outlasted the mob. The Truth or Dare showdown wasn't just a spectacle, it was a lesson. In a world of outrage and noise, sincerity and courage can silence a crowd. Maher, battered but unbowed, proved that truth, however sharp, outshines the mob's fury. For those who cherished the 90s, when talk shows dared to challenge and provoke, it was a nostalgic triumph, a nod to an era when voices like Maher's cut through the fog. So, what do you think? Was Maher right to stand his ground? Did the haters go too far? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear your take. Share this video with anyone who loves a good fight for truth and subscribe for more stories that dig deep. The battle may be over, but the conversation's just begun.